Hi members, welcome to the latest video lesson or revision lesson, whatever way you want to look at it. This time it's focusing on the character of Macbeth in Macbeth. Okay, so who is he? Well, he's the tragic hero of the piece. Remember, Macbeth is one of Shakespeare's tragedies. Macbeth is the tragic hero. In order to be a tragic hero, you have to, at one point, be the hero of the piece. And when we're introduced to Macbeth, he's a brave, loyal, noble, fierce warrior responsible for Scotland winning against Norway. And he's loved by everybody, the king and the audience. The tragedy comes in his downfall, which is unnecessary but yet inevitable. And that's what makes him the tragic hero. Okay, he's a Scottish general renowned for his brutal prowess and bravery on the battlefield. This, however, masks a darker side where he harbours an all-consuming ambition to become king. Okay, I've stuck a word bank for you up there. Adjectives to use when describing or analysing the character of Macbeth. He's brave, respected, feared, courageous, fearsome, brutal, tragic, ambitious, greedy, cowardly, flawed. Means he's not perfect, obviously. Cold, calculating, deceptive, untrustworthy, traitorous, treacherous, disloyal, superstitious, evil, gullible, naive, rebellious, and the mass murderer, to name but a few. Okay, what's his main role? Well, the narrative or the story centres on him and his actions. He's deeply ambitious and allows this ambition to lead him to kill King Duncan before going on a brutal killing spree in his desperate efforts to remain king. A couple of things in that little paragraph. He's deeply ambitious. This is his fatal flaw, the one aspect of his personality, his character, that brings about, precipitates his downfall, otherwise known as his hamartia or hamartia. I'm not sure how to pronounce that, to be honest, but you don't need to pronounce it in the exam, just know how to spell it and know what it is. It's his fatal flaw. His ambition, that's his fatal flaw, and it leads him to kill King Duncan. That's known as regicide. Now, they had, in the Jacobean era, the divine right of kings, the belief that the king was God-appointed, and the king had his natural successors. Remember, in the play, Duncan announces that his eldest son Malcolm, the Prince of Cumberland, is going to become the next king. Killing King Duncan, therefore, is going against God, and it's the worst of crimes to commit in that era. He's a close ally in his wife, who fans the flames of his ambition and actually plans the murder of Duncan herself. "Leave all the rest to me," she says. When Macbeth displays signs of weakness, she manipulates and persuades him to go through with the execution. You can link that to gender role reversal. You know, the woman's voice was not as dominant as the man's voice in the Jacobean era. And yet, within their relationship, at the start, certainly at the outset, she's the dominant one. She controls and manipulates. He becomes increasingly dependent on the witches. As his relationship with his wife grows distant, he fixes his attention and his need for guidance onto the witches, even though he says, "Damned are those who believe anything they say." He believes things they say, and as a consequence is damned. Ultimately, Macbeth's crimes come back to haunt him as he grows increasingly distant from his wife, who later commits suicide, before eventually succumbing himself in a battle to the death with Macduff. Remember, Macduff is out for revenge for the callous and needless murder of his wife and children at the hands of Macbeth. Remember, James I, king at the time, the Jacobean era, from about 1601 or 1603, I don't know, you have to look that up, sorry, recently victim of the gunpowder plot, and as a consequence, it was imperative, necessary, essential that Shakespeare end the play with the demise of the two characters responsible for the unjust murder of the king. Just as a little side point, the word obscene, it means like kind of hideous or ugly or terrible, and that derives from the term off stage, and the murder of the king takes place off stage because it was deemed too unpalatable, too unpleasant to show on stage. So obscene. Anyway, that's not relevant to Macbeth, just a little tangent, sorry. Right, quotations. Right, there's a couple, or 2 or 3 screens of quotations. Again, these are not just quotations you can use to connect to Macbeth. You can connect them to themes as well, and other characters perhaps. For example, the first one, so foul and fair a day I have not seen. These are Macbeth's opening words in the play. Did you know that? His very first line, so foul and fair a day I have not seen. Remind you of anybody else? Well, the witches in Act 1, Scene 1. Fair is foul and foul is fair, hover through the fog and filthy air. So his language, he's connected or linked through language to the 3 witches. Remember, the witches in Act 1, Scene 1 announced that they're going to meet Macbeth. So there's some alignment between these two. And at the time, the supernatural were feared and fascinated in equal measure. They were real. The supernatural was a real thing to be feared. Okay, connects to appearance and reality. Stars, hide your fires. Let not light see my black and deep desires. He knows what he's planning is wrong. It's against God. So he wants to keep his evil intentions under wraps. He wants to shield it from God. He doesn't want God to know. Furthering that, false face must hide what the false heart doth know. He knows he's going to kill Duncan, but he can't let it slip. He can't let his facial expressions reveal the inner truth. He doesn't want to kill Duncan necessarily. He wants to become king, but Duncan's rewarded him. He's been really good to him. He says himself, if chance will have me king, why chance may crown me without my stir, without me doing anything. Look, I've become Thane of Cawdor. I haven't killed anyone unnecessarily for that. Maybe if I hang tight, the king will come to me. The kingship will come to me naturally, and I won't have to commit this most heinous of crimes. Kind of triggering or representing or manifesting further in his guilt are his hallucinations throughout the play. Is this a dagger which I see before me? Hallucinating as he's about to kill Duncan could imply guilt, paranoia, and or madness. Things that you can connect to other parts in the play as well. If your exam question's on an extract, as you're analysing the extract, do link it as you're doing that. As you're analysing the extract, do link it to other parts in the play. There is none but he whose being I do fear. Because the witches greeted Banquo and told him that he would be father to kings as well, that set Banquo against Macbeth, in Macbeth's mind. And this line here, there is none but he whose being I do fear. As a result of what the witches have said to Banquo about Banquo, he fears. So Banquo, whom he fears, knows what he's done, but also for whom the witches also made generous predictions that his sons would be king, pointing to a degree of paranoia. He's got to do something about Banquo. So he sets about or plans the murder of Banquo and Banquo's son Fleance, but of course Fleance escapes. And as a result of that, Macbeth's mind is full of scorpions, an indication that he is troubled, suffering from mental illness. Compare this to his position before he killed Duncan, when everyone loved him and he was revered and respected and a hero in everybody's eyes. And now he's committed this crime, so this level of deceit and treachery doesn't pay. There are consequences, which is an important message from Shakespeare, especially with James I sat next to him. Oh, full of scorpions is my mind, dear wife. Now, where he was completely reliant upon Lady Macbeth and their relationship was very, very intimate and close, they confided in each other that they were going to commit regicide, the murder of a king. Treasonable acts. They'd have been executed had they revealed that to the wrong person. Where she once told him to look like the innocent flower, but be the serpent under it, as he's plotting the murder of Banquo and his son Fleance, he doesn't involve his wife at all. In fact, he says to her, be innocent of the knowledge, dearest Chuck. This is an indication that the gender roles have been resumed to normal for the time. He's not relying on her at all now. To the point that when news reaches him that his wife is dead, he has a very interesting response to that. He says two things: out, brief candle, life's but a walking shadow, and she should have died hereafter. Now, again, in relation to his wife's death, it could be interpreted as either him being irritated by the timing of her death, with him being in battle with Macduff and the forces from England, or it could also be interpreted as demonstrating how callous and devoid of emotion he now is, suggesting, well, we all have to die sometime, so she might as well have died now as any other time. Compare that to their relationship at the start, and look at all he's lost in this one act of killing the king. This one inability in him to control his ambition and not allow his ambition to overwhelm him and dictate how he acts. Either way, it's a damning indictment of their relationship, especially when compared to how close they were at the start. Okay, so there's lots of quotations there. Again, you don't need to memorize them all, but 2 or 3 to use for the character of Macbeth. Pick them carefully because some will have links and connections to other characters and other themes. In terms of exam relevance, well, if it's an extract you get, could be on the character of Macbeth, the obvious one, but also any question on Lady Macbeth or their relationship, because he's intrinsically linked with her. Obviously, he's the central protagonist or antagonist, as he's turned out. So any question on tension or drama could be linked to any question on themes of kingship. Compare his kingship to Duncan's fair and gentle reign, whereas his kingship with him and his fiend-like queen. Darkness, look at nature. Nature turns on itself. Horses eat each other. Little birds kill and eat big birds of prey. Nature's been disturbed because he's killed the king. He's gone against God. Good and evil, linked to that. Ambition, his fatal flaw. What's the other word? His hamartia. Appearance and reality. Deceit, gender, power, violence. Macbeth is violent. Macbeth is guilty. These are questions that could come up in your exam. And the supernatural and its influence over him in particular, and how he was, even against his own better judgment, placed his faith in the witches. They didn't tell him to do anything, mind you. He chose to act the way he did. They didn't tell him to act in a particular way. They just presented him with riddles, and he decided to interpret them as best fit his ambition. Yeah, okay, I think that covers most things for Macbeth. Certainly enough for you to get in the top grade. Happy revising.